Thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. Of course, on the Monday after the launch of the NPP Manifesto, there is only one thing on the agenda. And tonight, we're going to do a few things for you. We are digesting the manifesto. There is so much you've heard, and there is so much you've been doing since Saturday to try and break this down for you in a way that you can appreciate and understand. And so we're going to start with that. And of course, I'm going to be joined by the Information Minister. Of course, he's the man who speaks for the government, is the prime spokesperson for the government, and will give us some further clarity when we sit down for the conversation. And the last part of this, we would bring you that conversation about the Ijapa royalty saga. And so today we're going all the way to 10:30. There's a lot to get through for you. Let's start. Let's start with the NPP Manifesto and work we've been doing in trying to break this down for you here on PM Express. And one of the things we've been doing is to dig into the manifesto in a way that is easy to digest. And let's start with, we've broken the manifesto down into various sectors and counted the individual number of promises made there, because that gives you a sense of where the party is placing a bit more emphasis. And as you can see, this is the manifesto. Sector, housing, we counted, this is by our own count, 10 promises in all made in housing, right? If you look at health, there is 22 promises that we counted that made in the area of health in the 2020 manifesto that was launched on Saturday. If you look at agriculture, there is 16, economy, industry, and trade combined had 14 promises in all, which in itself is interesting. I'll tell you why these numbers are important. It gives you a sense of where the party, I guess, is focusing more. In education, we counted 20, and this is tied with transport also. Transport also had 20 promises that we counted. Infrastructure has 7, and of course, in a week where a lot of focus has been on infrastructure, I mean, this is an important number to look at in terms of the sheer number of promises that the NPP packed into the infrastructure sector. Foreign affairs is the lowest, is 2. You see tourism, creative arts has 5 promises made. Chieftaincy has 5 also. Social protection has 3 in the manifesto as we counted. Now we have energy, which has 6, and then governance, another key area that a lot of civil society guys watch, has 8. Youth and sports has 5. A total number of promises that we counted in the 2020 manifesto narrows down to 143 promises. Why are these important? You see that the sector with the most promises is health, which has 22 promises that we counted. Does that indicate that of course, according to the government and the government's own view, health is such an important matter? Doesn't it make sense, I think, in the midst of COVID-19, a lot that has influenced the crafting of the manifesto? Is that possibly why we are seeing 22 promises in health? And if you look at the various sectors and the numbers, health has a greater proportion of promises made in 22. Maybe COVID-19 is a reason why there is so many promises, followed by education and transport, both tied at 20 promises each. Now, education is important. Remember, in 2016, the NPP ran a campaign primarily on education. It was a flagship thing for them with the free SHS. In 2020, it's in second place to health. Of course, in 2016, we didn't have COVID-19. In 2020, we have COVID-19. Education is important, but it's in second place. Transport is in third as well. I mean, joint second is both education and transport. These are very interesting, I guess, issues to look at. But look at foreign affairs. Foreign affairs has only 2. I guess it tells a story. This is a country that is not big on foreign affairs. So the least number of promises we see in foreign affairs. But agriculture has 16, which is after health and also transport. It comes in third place. And of course, agriculture is a big deal for the government also. Remember in 2016, planting for food and jobs, that is key. But let's do something else with the numbers that we see. We are looking at the 2016 numbers. Imani counted 510 promises in 2016. So quickly, you begin to see what is happening. 2016, 510 promises. 2020, we are at 143, a drastic reduction in the numbers of promises made from one election year to the next. What is happening? We'll tell you what we think is happening and explain why we think the numbers of promises had fallen. But let's look at the comparison. Comparison is important in trying to compare. This is a party in power, by the way. They came into power in the back of 2016. They are bringing us a 2020 manifesto. You must do the comparison, which is what we're doing for you tonight. As I said, if you look at the shared numbers, 2016, 510. 2020, 143 promises. Drastic reduction. Is reality check setting in? I mean, when you are in government, you cannot be as bombastic as you are in opposition, coming into wanting to regain power. And so you promise a lot. And then when you get into government, some say reality check sets in, you begin to become a bit more moderate in what you promise people, because you've seen how difficult it is possibly to implement some of the things you promised in 2016. Is that why we're seeing the reduction in numbers? We don't know. We'll try and find out. Again, 2016, the NPP had a standout flagship promise, which is free SHS. In 2020, it's difficult to find what the obvious standout flagship promise is. I mean, the information minister possibly could help us understand whether there's a flagship promise. Nobody can argue that in 2016, free SHS wasn't the flagship promise that was made. What is it for 2020? We couldn't find one outstanding one that stood out of the lot, but there's a lot of them. Now, let's look at again, one of the key differences in 2016-2020 manifestos. Promises were simplified into number-based slogans. You remember 1D, 1F, one district, one factory, one village, one dam, one constituency, $1 million. 2020, that has given way. It's gone. No more fantastic numbers and slogans. A departure from number-based promise to a more general framing of the promises. Here, it was very easy for journalists like us, civil society, to track. One district, one factory means every district will have it. So it's easy to go there and look. I am going to count. I have a finite number of districts. Do I have a factory in all of them? Very easy to track. Government is moving away from that after 4 years in power. Again, so why do we have the difference? We think what is happening is what we call the incumbency reality check. That's what we think is happening here. When you are in government, you get to implement the policies. You know how difficult it is. When you're introducing a manifesto, you will necessarily be checked by the reality that you've seen in 4 years. Possibly that is what is accounting for the drop in promises from 510 to 143. Now, something else that we've been looking into in the 2020 manifesto is what we found, that at least 13 promises have been repeated or are similar. 2016 manifesto to 2020 manifesto, 13 at least we counted that are repeated or similar. What are these? Very interesting. Some of them word for word lifted and reintroduced in 2020. This one fascinates me. Collaboration with the private sector, provide free Wi-Fi coverage for senior secondary and tertiary institutions nationwide dedicated to learning. 2016 manifesto. The wording almost the same in 2020. Complete the provision of free Wi-Fi at all senior secondary schools and public tertiary institutions and training colleges. That's it, right there. There's more in the manifesto. NPP will enact consolidated minerals revenue management law. It's back in 2020, passed into law, mineral revenue management bill. Does that mean that at least these two that have pointed out that this is an admission that yes, we promised in 2016 we couldn't deliver, so we're bringing it back? I mean, we're going to interrogate that. Why? Was that the case? Why couldn't they? Why did the government fail to do it in 2016, 2017 to 2020, and they're bringing it back? The key question you ask is, if we couldn't do it then, what's the guarantee that you could do it now? We'll get information minister to answer that question. We have formalizing the economy through the stabilization of national database. You see it there, linking national identification card with Ghanaian Revenue Authority, convert all NHIA card numbers into 10, similar promise. And it runs through the 13 that I've talked about. This is another one. Create an information portal, set up a task force to assist youth in artisans to make their products and services on a global, local, national, and global scale. Look at the wording in 2020. Build a digital platform for artists to make their products available to global market. Again, very similar promise there. And this really runs through some of the key areas. This is infrastructure, by the way. 2016, leverage oil revenue to complete Accra, Kumasi, Paga rail line connections and the rehabilitation of the Western and Eastern rail lines. Eastern Rail Line is here again. And then you see also the mention of the Western Rail Line, again, a key thing that has been repeated here. Again, fishing landing sites, again, is there in 2016. The landing sites were again mentioned, pretty similar to what we saw. I want to quickly go to the end of this, and because it's just, as I said, repetition is similar. Promises, building a Tema, a Kosomo Rail Line, the Volta Lake Transport Improvement, which is pretty similar to what we saw in 2016. Invest in the expansion and equipment of medical schools is brought back, expanding access to medical schools in Ghana. 2020, upgrade all existing district hospitals. It's come back, but with some greater detail in 2020. Obviously, I guess COVID-19 dictates a bit of the issues when it comes to health also. Similar with this. And create land banks. Again, is that in 2016, pretty similar wording. Facilitated development of an active mortgage market. Again, back, greater detail in 2020. I want to quickly end with this controversial one that we found in the 2020 manifesto. And we call it, what has the NDC got to do with this? There's a promise in the 2020 manifesto that says the NPP will launch in 2020 going forward, 2021 going forward, a road maintenance infrastructure program to employ the youth. This is on page 159. It sounded very, very familiar. I thought I'd heard it before, so I went to check. And I found that in 2011, the NDC rolled out something pretty similar called the Youth in Road Maintenance Policy, executed under the Youth Employment Program. That sounds pretty familiar to me. What is the difference in this? Is this an NDC policy already executed that somehow has found its way back? We'll get some clarity on this, the two. Now, I'm going to be joined by someone you know, he's Information Minister, who, of course, is my guest tonight. And he's joining me in the studio right now. Kujo Nkrumah is the Information Minister, and is, as you can see, walking on the set right now with his book already prepared. Mr. Nkrumah, I'm grateful that you could join us here on PM Express.
Thanks for having me, Evans.
Great. And now, Mr. Nkrumah has been gracious enough to also walk us through a bit of the things that he himself has highlighted. And as you can see, he's going to talk us through NPP 2020 Manifesto. This, you've heard ours. This is our version. Our breakdown. What is the government's? Does he agree with ours? Let's see what he says.
Well, Evans, let me start by congratulating you and your team for the good background work you have done. Our count of the 2016 manifesto and the promises therein, which we account for, comes up to 289.
In 2020?
In 2016.
2016.
You will find that groups like Imani, and I think even what the NDC has done, breaks down sometimes one single promise into a number of promises and lists them as though they were different promises. And you would therefore find that in our count, when you put the whole thing together, for example, when we say in 2016 that we will modernize agriculture by doing the following, what we are doing is counting, for example, the 1, 2, 3, 4 items we've spoken about, but not necessarily modernizing agriculture as one item, and then in addition to 1, 2, 3, 4. So you will find little differences in some of the numbers. But be that as it may, in our count so far, about 80% of the 2016 promises we have either delivered or we're in the process of delivering. Now, if I just may quickly do an outline of, you know, what we have looked at in preparing this manifesto, you'll notice that this manifesto is 192 pages. We've spent 151 of those pages accounting for our stewardship. It's the last 41 pages that speak to new promises, some of which you have highlighted in your presentation. We've also spent some time outlining the gains we have made over the last 3.5 years. And then I'll probably just take you through an outline of some of the key promises that we are putting out there for what we like to call round 2, as you see put out on many of our T-shirts and our communication materials that are out there. Now, in 2016, by this time, you recall that some of the things that Ghanaians were grappling with, because it's always important to get the background, was a fast declining economy in terms of growth. Remember 2011, when we hit the highest point, about 14% GDP, mostly driven by the oil of 2008 from the Kufuor era. So by 2016, growth is coming down to about 3.4%. You are having high inflation of about 15%, interest rates of about 25%. The currency is tumbling, depreciating at a very fast rate. you are having all of these cohorts of young unemployed people forming graduate unemployment groups, etc. And then also in particular, poorly regulated, poorly managed financial services sector. I'm sure we'll have some time to speak about it later this evening because of some of the resolution mechanisms that we have put in place. You also have a collapsing national health insurance scheme and the re-emergence of cash and carry. Remember, around that time, you have even the Christian health providers coming together and saying that we're going to move on to cash and carry because health insurance is no longer working.
To be fair, that problem hasn't been solved completely under your government.
No, payment is not down to zero, but the dire nature of it, which actually put Christian and religious-based health organizations at a point where they were threatening to pull off, has seen a quick move, a sharp move from where the needle was. About 5 years of disrupted electricity supply, what we used to call doomsaw. And you recall around this time, the kind of demonstrations, etc., that were taking place. Public sector recruitment because of the IMF program had been suspended except for essential services. And then one of the things we like to talk about a lot, allowances for nurses and teachers suspended around
You still maintain you solved
this time. Well, today you would notice that doomsaw is a thing of the past. The thing that
because
we
of
said,
Mahama.
Because of Mahama, who did what exactly?
Because of the investment that they put in, as in January 2017 when you came, there wasn't doomsaw.
Well, we consistently made the point that the challenge was not technical. It wasn't a capacity of production. It was a challenge of being able to afford oil and gas for even the already existent plants. What Mr. Mahama did was added what we now realize is overcapacity, which we spoke of at the time. And the overcapacity has now even added a second tier problem, which now leads us to about $1 billion a year for take-or-pay contracts, another matter we are dealing with.
Did you meet doomsaw in 2017?
We did, and we have cured it.
I mean, I lived in this country.
Yes.
In 2017, when you came into power, doomsaw was fake.
We will vehemently disagree with you, because if you look at the antecedents of all the things that happened prior to January and even the first quarter of 2017, you will recall how businesses at the time were still complaining it was an issue. The government at the time, of course, the government at the time, well, in 2016, ending of 2016.
That's my point.
The government at the time would tell you that they were putting things in place to resolve it. But remember, we consistently argued that it was not a production capacity challenge, because we had enough installed capacity. The challenge was the inability to procure oil and gas to hold those plants even existent working. So if you added more plants that we didn't need at the time, you don't get to say in the end that that is what I saw.
What credit do you give John Mahama, though?
For doing what?
What credit do you give him?
For doing what exactly? For creating the problem?
No, for fixing the problem.
For adding power plants that were not necessarily
increasing
required.
our capacity.
And today we have excess capacity which we are paying for. Our argument has always been, and it remains, that the challenge we had with doomsaw was a financial, not a technical challenge. It was about running the economy in such a way that you could find resources to fire up the plants. If you chose not to look at that problem and instead add on more power plants, I'm not sure we're going to have a conversation about giving you some credit for it. But fast forward, the numbers don't lie. One of the major things we measure to see whether a country is moving forward or not, macro growth numbers. So you would have, and these are numbers between Ghana, in fact, these are numbers from Ghana Statistical Service.
What should we focus?
Well, we'll focus on the top line numbers. So 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, we look at 2020 with COVID and without COVID. And then we'll look at recovery. So take agriculture. We inherited agriculture at 2.9. And we started introducing what I'll talk about sometime today, some of these programs like planting for food and jobs, planting for export and rural development, etc. You will notice agri productivity begin to pick up 6.1, 4.8 on top of the 6.1, 4.6 on top of the 4.8. This year, we were budgeted to do 5.1 until COVID hit. And even with COVID, as economies are contracting, we are still going to grow on top of the 5.1. We won't hit, on top of the 4.6, we won't hit our 5.1, but we're still going to hit about 3.7. And because of the strong foundation that has been laid, and now as we get out of COVID, we're going to quickly get back to 4.2, 4.6, 5.1, 5.3. How does it compare? These are projections, of course. How does it compare to 2.9? Projections are based on your pipelines. How does it compare to 2.9?
Well, we've made several projections before. So nobody knew COVID was going to hit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so the foundation...
Just put it in context.
It's fine. The foundation you have laid, the kind of pipelines you have, give you reason and basis to make these projections. And these are not my projections. These are Ghana Statistical Service projections. Remember something like rice. If you look at the rice growth curve towards hitting self-sustainability in, I think, about 2021 or so, they are able to look at all of those pipelines and project the kind of productivity you're expecting. Take something like industry. It was sitting around 4.3 in 2016 with doomsaw and everything associated with it. By 2017, you are hitting 15.7. By 2018, about 10.6 on top of the 15.7. By 2019, 6.4 on top of the 10.6. You were hoping to hit 8.6 this year with VW and Nissan and all of these plants coming in. 1D1F getting to full throttle. Because of COVID, you're going to have a challenge, but it will still grow at 0.8%. But look at the recovery path, 5.6, 6.9, 5.4, 5. I'll quickly move to services. This is how poor services was doing by 2016, 2.8.
But in 2018, you dropped even further below what they left you.
You did, which is on top of the 3.3. And then by 2019...
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you said this is how poor, but this is poorer.
No problem. And I'm saying that this 2.7 is on top of that 3.3. If you look at it in the nominal terms, you see the outturns that are coming. But look at 2019. Now look at where we were stabilizing to. COVID now takes us back in terms of services, the lockdowns, people staying home, people not having opportunity to perform. All of these services are listed here. But we're expecting recovery to pick up. So the big picture you find from growth is that our economy has come up strongly. COVID has given us some challenges, and that's why you find, I think, chapter 2 of our manifesto focus extensively on the challenges that COVID has delivered to us and how we hope to recover from it. Now, very quickly, let me deal with two things. The key gains of the last 3.5 years. One of the things that we've always been talking about is macro stability. Without it, you can't do much. Because without it, you can't sustain any intervention that you introduce. You can't even have sustained growth on it. You would notice that the first part of our manifesto outlines what we've done to bring back macro stability. I'll just give you a few beyond the growth numbers. Look at inflation. About 7.9 end of 2019, 11.4 as of July 2020. The target is 8 plus or minus 2, and we're doing well to stay within that band. Take interest rate, 16% end of 2019, 14% as at March 2020. Growth and expansion comes with jobs, incomes, and improvement in quality of lives, as I've just been going through. We can all tell that story. Again, we've been proud to say that we've introduced several social programs that are enhancing access to education, health, and social protection. I don't need to belabor the argument about free SHS, and about getting more doctors and nurses out there, even in these COVID times.
I see you're repeating Baumia 17,000 projects, 17,000 projects initiatives.
It's not Baumia 17,000. Those are the numbers of the government of Ghana.
But you've had the NDC today. They factor some of the claims. Particular one, astro put in there as done. We sent our reporter there tonight, wasn't done. Yeah, I've heard
Abuabia Samoa, the member of parliament from the area, make the point that yes, that was an error that shouldn't have been included.
So you admit that?
But check this.
The NDC was right. On ghost project.
No, not on ghost project. Check the
but 17. That was a ghost project.
Yeah, but one ghost project one project out of 17,334 does not make the entire presentation full of ghost project. But here's my point.
But you get the point.
Oh yes, I do.
You put in there. You admit that.
Well, I've repeated that 2-3 times. Yeah. I'm saying if it's 17,334 initiated projects, 8,746 of them completed, 8,558 ongoing, and we have reason to say, what is it, 36? Is it 40? Is it 300 that maybe are questionable? That still leaves a huge chunk, if you net it out, about 17,000 infrastructure projects across this country, even if you discount 334. I'm saying, and our argument is this, we have invested heavily in infrastructure, doing more with less resources. If we go to the argument of our infrastructure budget over the last 4 years,
I'm just curious, because you said, yes, you've said the Adenta one is 1. Yeah. But even if you discounted by what? You said 300.
Even if I took off the whole 334.
My question is, we like to be accurate.
Yes.
How did we miss it? How did the government miss that?
MMDC's forward the data sets in. It was forwarded in. It turns out that it was inaccurate. I'm saying that even if you went beyond that one, verifications were done.
And they still missed it.
I'm sure they missed it. Even if you took out that one, or give or take the 26 that our colleagues in the NDC say that they had a challenge with, some of which I've seen tonight, even online. People go back to those places and say that, but that can't be true. We see these projects and put some of the videos online. I'm saying even if you discount 334, that is 17,000 infrastructure projects still out there. The challenge has been to our colleagues on the other side to produce a database of how many projects they have done so that you can do the comparisons. But be that as it may, strengthening anti-corruption and governance institutions has taken place. We have also, especially in this COVID period, provided compassionate, competent, concerned leadership through all of the interventions that we've put out there. So if you look at the data of work that has been done in the last 3.5 years, you find that we've discharged ourselves pretty well. Now in 2020, let me just highlight a few things.
As in going forward now?
Going forward. In 2020 to the 2024 period, we talk about the fact that jobs remains key on the agenda. Our data as published in our manifesto accounts for about 2 million jobs. If we have some time, we'll go into it.
So you created 2 million jobs in 4 years?
Yes, in 3.5 years.
In 3.5 years?
Yeah, we'll have some time to go through the breakdown.
Jobs numbers are always difficult to verify because we don't have it in Ghana.
Well,
so I wonder where you got the 2 million from.
Well, some of them are public sector jobs, some of them are private sector jobs as per SNIT database. Some of them, as you know, for example, when it comes to agriculture, they explain the basis on which they arrive at that data.
That has always been challenged by the experts on the ground, including the farmers themselves.
Well, we'll have an opportunity. Don't worry, we'll have an opportunity to go through that data set here. It's on page 9 of the manifesto. But our intention is to continue on that path. I mean, if you look at the number of nurses and teachers and persons we've recruited, whether in the National Identification Authority or even the formal government sector, those ones are not up to dispute. There are some that some may raise questions about, and we can resolve those issues. But our task is to continue with the job creation agenda to move beyond our 2 million and build some more. Stability, as we have spoken about, has been shaky because of COVID. We intend to bring it back and consolidate it. Agriculture is a major employer. We have a number of agri programs. We intend to step it up some more. Industrial growth, now that you see things like the automotive industry coming on board, the 1D1F moving from the 76 where we are towards the full completion of the 232, as has been outlined there.
This is something we need to address before we go on. 1D1F, as I said at the beginning, 2016, one of the key differences we saw, you were very number-based, slogans, very easy to verify. One district, one factory, easy. All districts must have factories by the time you finish your first term. This is not the case as of now.
It is. It remains the case, and that's one of the things
you
I
have
to point out to you.
By January 7, 2021, you have one factory in every district?
Well, the current count is 232 at various stages. 76 of them are already functioning.
Yeah.
The remainder is what they intend to work on and give you a scorecard by the time the government comes down.
76 complete.
We are functioning. 76
so complete and functioning.
Okay. And then you have 232 that, in fact, the total basket is 232, out of which 76
But this is the big question there.
Yes.
It's taken you, this is 3.5 years, right? 3.5 years to complete 76 and functioning.
Yes.
You're telling me that you're going to use the next 5 months to complete?
I have not said that. I've said
that's my question, basically.
No, I've said that by the time the gavel comes down on the night of the 6th, you have a clear account of how much of this 232 you were able to complete.
Direct question. Will you have one district, one factory in every single district by that night?
My answer to you is that today, as I speak to you, we have 232 that we are working on, out of which 76 have been completed. The task to the ministry is to ramp up and do as much as they can before the gavel comes down on the night of the 6th. We'll be here.
My question is direct.
And my answer is direct
You've done projections. You've done projections on the other sectors.
Yes.
You know where you are. You've 3.5 years completed and functioning 46.
Yes.
76. 76.
Yes.
I'm taking your word for 76. 9th of January 6th. I'm asking a direct question. Will you come? Because that's the problem. The promise is very clear.
And
no arguments about that.
I hear you.
Will we have one factory in every district?
I have.
You can't say.
No, I'm repeating my answer.
Yeah.
That currently, as I speak to you, we have 232 at various stages, out of which 76 have been completed and are functioning. There is a remainder that the minister responsible has been tasked with to function and to ensure that he brings to completion. By the night of the 6th, when the gavel comes down, we will see how much he has achieved. But here's the point. If we did not have a program like this, we will not be talking these numbers.
But that's not what you promised.
No, if I may.
I get the argument.
If I may. If we did not have a program like this, we will not have these numbers. If by the time we are done with it, we are able to showcase to the people of Ghana that this was our commitment, it wasn't a hoax, this is how much of it we've been able to deliver in this period. We are pretty confident that the Ghanaian people looking at
But that's not what you promised us.
I don't know how many times you want me to
No, but I'm just simple. You're saying that, I mean, if I get there...
I'm saying...
You're not making...
I'm saying...
caveats.
I'm not making caveats. I'm saying that 232 out of 260...
I get it. You've repeated that.
Yeah. 232 out of 260. Any Ghanaian out there will know that this administration has kept faith with a promise. In the midst of all the constraints, this is how much they have finished, and they will make a judgment. We'll leave it them to make that judgment.
Yeah, but you just admit that's not what you promised them.
Well, we did. We promised one district, one factory.
Yeah, but you don't.
And
one district, one factory is one district, one factory.
Yes, and we have 232 out of 260.
Okay.
That leaves you. I mean, if you take 232 out of 260, that leaves you with a small number that has not been touched. By the 232, they will be able to tell us how much of that.
As we stand here tonight,
they'll be able to tell us how much of that they have done by the night of the 6th. And I'm saying to you that we have demonstrated that we've kept faith with the promise. It wasn't a hoax. It's not something we forgot about or threw away.
You've attempted to execute it.
We have done a good chunk of it. We haven't finished.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity to showcase it to the people for them to make a decision.
Okay.
And we'll leave them to make that judgment.
Filing of physical infrastructure
There's
gap.
a huge fiscal infrastructure gap when it comes to roads and bridges across the country. We've done a bit of it this year. We have not completed. We are optimistic that across the country, looking at the numbers that we are doing, God willing, if we have a second term, we'll be able to do some more in that process. And then the final list of major things. We're talking about the regional hospitals. We're talking about the National Rental Assistance Scheme, which has been one of the topics that's been discussed.
A question when we sit down, I need to clarify on this. Very important for me when we sit down.
I'll be happy to answer that. We're talking about 16 model senior high schools in the Zongo communities across the 16 regions. We're talking about a harbour in Cape Coast, a new airport in Cape Coast.
Two things to clarify.
Yes, they've become very topical. Yeah. I think between yesterday and today. We're talking of a National Olympic Sports Stadium complex. Feasibility studies need to be completed on the rail link through Kasua to Accra, and then the Eastern Rail Line.
Which I said was a promise you made in 2016 that you didn't fulfill.
No, but the thing is, when you are in opposition, you cast a broad vision of what you seek to do. When you come to power,
you get reality check.
No, it's not a reality check.
That's what happened to you.
You do what you ought to do to keep faith with the people that these are my promises.
That is what we call reality check.
If at the end of your tenure, there are, 13 promises, as you mentioned, which are outstanding, there's nothing embarrassing about raising those promises into your second term. That in all honesty, I was able to complete these ones or come a very far distance in these ones. But for these 13, I need to move them into the second term to complete. I don't think there's anything
But this is the question that raises. If you fail, this is the question that raises.
If I just may land on that one. Also, you notice that for some of those 13 promises, we say we will continue, which means we have started with it in the first phase. We admit we haven't completed, but we will continue with it in the second phase.
This is the question it raises. If you had 4 years to implement the policy that you yourself introduced in 2016 and you failed to do it, why should we believe that you can do it in the next 4 years?
It is different from if this government came and abandoned all of its promises.
Some of them you didn't touch at all.
Well, you have listed about 13 of them. We have mentioned to you that about 80% of our promises, we have kept faith with them. About 20% of them, we have not been able to touch them in this first term. We have migrated these promises, or we have said that, listen, in all honesty, this is what we have done. This 20% of our promises, we have not been able to keep faith with it for various reasons. I don't want to go into resource and other challenges. Now, what we are saying is that these promises, we are moving them into our second term. God willing, we have a second term, we have a second opportunity. There are things that we will deliver in addition to the new priority areas that we are talking about in our second term.
So Ghanaians should trust
and I don't think there's anything...
On those 13 at least that you couldn't do, they should trust that somehow you can do in 4 years, in the next 4 years.
But if we have done 80% of 289 promises, if we've done 80% of it, I'm sure that the average Ghanaian watching us tonight can keep faith that this administration, even if they were not able to complete 20% of their promises, we can trust that if they migrate it into the second term, in addition to the few headline promises that they are making, they will be able to complete it.
Okay.
Now, if you look at some of the other things that we're talking about, digitization, it started. We haven't completed with the digitization agenda. We're optimistic that Ghanaians will have faith in us for what we have done so far to complete the digitization agenda or to take it a very far road in the next term. Also, again, using digitization as a tool to curb corruption by improving access to government services and therefore reducing human interaction. Stimulating entrepreneurship has been a big thing. About 19,000 different business units trained, support for about 10,000 of them or so. We believe we've come a long way, and with an opportunity for a second term, we can do a lot more in that space. So just as a headline, these are some of the key things that we've been talking about for round 2, and we are hopeful that when the people of Ghana give us an opportunity, we can do our best to implement them.
I want you to stay with me, because when we return from this break, we're going to take a seat, and then we're going to be scrutinizing a bit more. You've had a bit of the questioning already. But we're going to scrutinize a bit more some of the key areas, get some further clarity. The airport question is still a raging one. I want Kojo Nkrumah's clarification, a few things. And we'll talk about the rent issue as well. But then, of course, at 10, we'll start a conversation around the Japa royalties issue as well, which I know many of you are also very interested in. Stay with us right back to interrogate a few of these things that Mr. Nkrumah had put forward. You've heard ours also. We'll see how it emerges. Stay with us.